Just to get started, let's go into it. Last month we discussed V2. V2 will fix a lot of the downfalls or cons of V1. Um, and the biggest thing is you can actually see this um, in the decent DAO channel for Sarcophagus. They have actually shown a they've actually shown some updates on what's going on with V2, what it's going to look like, what the user interface is going to be. You'll see a lot of people in that channel actually talking about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, asking questions, having comments. For the most part, it looks very similar. There's some things that are going to be built out, made a little bit more clear, made a little bit more foolproof, to say the least, and also changing some things up so that it's even easier to use than the original one, where there'll be more details on the archaeologist. It'll be a little bit more straightforward in what you're going to do, and that's I think the biggest one that is needed if you're going to be using the um, app. First off, in general, typically that user is more adept than a normal beginner, first time ever using the app, right? You want to have someone. You want to make this as easy for a beginner as possible. So that's where this interface comes in. You know the words you use, the way it looks, it needs to be intuitive, or you're gonna have a problem. And I think unless you know what you're doing, there's always going to be that small, even if it's a speed bump, it's still a slight barrier to entry because no one wants to use that if they don't understand it. Of course, we have what's going on with the embalmer. This may actually go away. Right now, the embalmer, based off the images, you can kind of see, hey, how much do you want to spend per month, or however long your um, resurrection time is, or to your expiration date, whatever, however long that time is. You can actually say, hey, I only want to spend this much, and I don't want to attempt to rewrap for a year, right? You can actually make that decision straightforward. That may move away. We may, based off of what the developer is saying, that may cause other other problems in itself, just with complexity on the actual DApp. So they said they're going to see if that's going to actually happen. There's the ability to transfer shards used for encryption, right? This is essentially a marketplace, right? You need to be an archaeologist to be able to do this. But when it comes to the encryption, right, the key is broken into shards, right? Multiple shards. You get to make that decision on how many shards you need. So let's say it's 5 shards. You are an archaeologist and you hold one of the shards. You can actually give away one of your shards because one, you no longer want to deal with you don't want to be an archaeologist. You don't, or maybe you want to cut your archaeologist off. You may not want to deal with that sarcophagus. It's up to you, right? You have that decision, so you can then trade it. This is going to be interesting because one, it's going to allow sarcophagus to be sustained for longer periods of time. Two, you could see a third-party market pop up, which may be very interesting to see when that actually comes up. I'm expecting that as sarcophagus starts to grow, that will be more of the case. Maybe you want to be the holder of more shards, so you're willing to pay even a slight premium to get the shard because you'll know over the long term you're going to make more Sarco. The next big thing is that what's going on with V2, the archaeologist will be moving to libp2p as opposed to HTTPS, right? You won't need to buy a website, right? You're going to be dealing with a library of dependencies that will allow you to connect the archaeologist to the network, allow users to see that. You don't need a website. You're not exposing yourself from a security standpoint. You're not exposing your information on that. It makes it much easier. One, it's going to be much easier as well to use. Two, it's obviously going to be a much better, more efficient than going through the web in case anything goes down. And then finally, the DApp will of course be available for testing in the future, and that's kind of the breakdown for V2. V2 is coming, right? That is the future of Sarcophagus. That is where we're headed. What happens after that specifically for the app, the DApp rather, is to be determined. There could be, instead of version updates, there'll be slight It won't be full version updates. It'll just be, kind of updates to what is going on. That is to be seen. That information hasn't come out yet. We're very hopeful, and it's nice that the devs are always talking to the community and letting everyone know what's going on. So this is just a short breakdown of what is going on. Decent DAO is working hard on that. Again, their information is in the one. They come into the Sarcophagus. You can see that in the Sarcophagus GitHub, how many updates they're doing. If you go to the Decent DAO Discord, they are in the builders chat. They are currently working on the user interface. You can see that, and then you can also ask any questions you want in the community channel, and someone will always be there to answer. So that's the big thing for what's actually going on with the DApp. But it's something that was questioned during last month's community talk, technical talk, was about the. Oh, before I continue, are there any questions for V2 on what's going on? That was just a short summary of a lot of the highlights of what's going on for V2. So then let's continue. So one of the big things that is coming for Sarcophagus is this software developers kit, right? For anyone who doesn't know what a software developers kit, right? You can see that they're building tools for Sarcophagus. It's going to provide a framework. It allows someone to come in, essentially build a website, and they can use the software developers kit to create the website in a way that hooks in to the network that is used by Sarcophagus, right? So if someone is more adept, they may want to just go straight to the source, which is sarcophagus.io, right? If it's let's say an insurance company or a legal office, they can just make a website themselves, create the front end, use the documentation or the code samples. As you can see, they can use the documentation, and that will allow them to set that up. They will set up their own front end, and typically they can gear it towards who they're dealing with. If they're dealing with someone who a group of people who are slightly older, I don't expect someone who's 70 years old to come in and use sarcophagus.io. Right? That is the hope is that it would be easy enough for someone to do it, and if they had the knowledge, they of course would be able to. But someone who's just getting introduced to something like sarcophagus.io will have their head spinning because they need to learn a whole bunch of information about cryptocurrencies in general to be able to then say, okay, now I understand cryptocurrencies. What's this new project? So the software developers kit is made to allow companies or whoever, other DeFi projects to hook into the actual network and use that. So the big deal on software developers kit, and this was actually originally discussed at Jekyll Island back in January, where there was the meetup for Sarcophagus, right? There are quite a few things that are needed here, right? Documentation needs to be clear. Users need to know what's going on, right? They need to know how it's used, why it's used. There are, of course, code samples or examples of what it looks like. There are libraries, right? Users need to just be able to come in, type in a few lines of code, and be able to use that actual portion. You obviously have analytics tools, right? You can see what's going on with the network. Did your Arweave get on chain? You could see that if you're making the front end for this, you'll be able to analyze that yourself. Maybe you don't want the users to see it because they don't necessarily need to. So Sarcophagus can be in the background, right? But for the front end, it just looks like you're just making the decisions on a will, essentially. And then of course there's debuggers, right? Those are the basic items that are typically involved in an SDK. And it's a big deal, right? It will allow these companies to use this one right up in front of whoever needs it, right? And the biggest thing is the ease of use. One, the plan is to be as easy as possible. But two, once you have that front end, you don't need to worry about anything. So there's a couple examples written down. I was speaking with DJ Coro. He actually pulled up these examples. And the biggest one, right, is you're going to help developers deploy their own front ends for the DMS, right? They're going to make their own website. Or it could be a website, it could be a portal. It's up to them. It could be, only locally completed, but they will have that, and it can link to network. Right? You can build a different app on top of Sarcophagus. It could still use a DMS, but maybe it won't just be a website. It'll be something very, very specific, user specific. You can also add, existing functionalities. Maybe you want it to be able to add emails to the DMS. While this may be something that is discussed being added to Sarcophagus, you don't need to wait for Sarcophagus to do that. You can create your own implementation outside, right? And these extra functionalities can be something like an email, right? You can, when it's completed, you can have the wallet mint an NFT, right, into the embalmer wallet, right? It can do that. You can, like I said before, create your custom functionality, right? An email. You can automate the wrapping, or you can automate wrapping, right? You don't need to have someone come in and type in, I want this to rewrap at this time. It can just automatically do it because you have set up some parameters that allow it to do that. And then, of course, you can add a different external trigger. Maybe you have your phone service. If you can't, if your phone can't ping back to you for, let's say, 5 hours, it could automatically shut off, right? It won't automatically rewrap, right? This is a combination functionality. It won't automatically rewrap, and then, the DMS can function properly and work as is, right? So the whole idea with these software developers kits is to allow people to leverage the already existing network and create their own front end. And what that's going to do is, one, it's going to allow people to focus on their cohort of people that are important to them or important to their business, but it still strengthens the network because more people will be using the network and they don't even know it, right? This is something it's really cool because, the everything going on in the background, you don't need to know what's going on. You can just use the front. This is when our developer comes in and they can just do this themselves for some place of business and allow this. And this is a big deal. And the next step is, how do you get people to use this? Why would someone want to use this versus just making their own? Well, one, the network's already there. Two, you want to make the documentation as clear as possible for them to use, and you want to make the ability to use SDK, as easy as possible. Next step of this is targeting the people who would want to use this, right? Again, I said legal office. I said a couple other things about adding these extra functionalities. But the first step is getting people to actually use Sarcophagus, and that's where the next step comes in. But before I get to that, are there any questions? Do you have any ideas on? So this is not basic example like help developers deploy their front ends with the DMS, right? That is something that you can expect, right? But to the extent of what these front end developers want to do, that's up to them. These are just examples that were discussed between me and DJ Coro. I wanted him to we were talking and he was thinking about ideas that could be easy to implement, but maybe something that's not going to be documented at first, but could come later, right? These are not set in stone. This is just ideas for typical other SDKs when they're created. If you don't know what another real life experiences, there are typically SDKs for, if you have an Android phone, you can get an SDK app on your phone. Usually they only save those for developers, but it's a way to get around any like the Google Play Store. So this will be kind of straight to the source. This goes straight to the source, so you don't have to worry about, are there any repercussions on me using this? This one is expected to be obviously open source like the project, but it'll also be an easier way to hook in. So are there any questions or any ideas with this?
Well, I guess one thing I just had, and you kind of mentioned it too, SDKs will just allow for more extensibility of Sarcophagus. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, quick change, but like as people start building and using it more on their back end, that will just incentivize the network to grow further and further. So as more people are using it in other applications, like the legal office example or the other examples that you listed, as more people are using it, it'll just drive more adoption and help bring more people to become archaeologists and serve other purposes to help kind of grow the whole ecosystem. So this is just one way outside of our through Sarcophagus.io to allow people to join, be part of the community, build off of our technology, and make it fit for purpose for whatever they are planning to use it for.
Exactly. That's perfect. And to give the most concrete example I can give you, right? Let's just say this SDK exists, a front end. There's a front end developer working on it. What they can do is they can make specific parameters. Let's say the time for the resurrection period, the amount of shards there will be. They can set that up so the user never has to see that, right? They can set up, well, we always want a 3 of 5, so they can do that. They essentially will be the embalmer, just letting the user select a few options like the file they're uploading. It could be as simple as they let the user decide what file they're uploading. It could be, documentation on their house. And say, okay, here you go. And they say, just upload it to this portal. Well, the portal sends them, and then everything else they have is already set. They have, a 3 of 5. They want to pay this much for a digging fee and bounty. The user never has to see that. The third party or who is functioning as the middleman will actually set up everything else, and it can automatically go through and just and push that through, and the user never even has to know. So it's really interesting, and I'm sure that when this starts, as this gets closer, you're going to see more people start discussing what's going to be possible, and you'll have a more concrete image of what's going on. Okay, so who would want to use this? Why would they want to use this? How do you get this information out there with V2? And I think something we mentioned, right? We have to go out to let people know this is possible, right? This is what already exists. You can leverage this. You don't have to build out a system. You can just use it yourself. And that's kind of where Sarcophagus is right now, right? We're in a period where the technology is being updated and the information now is starting to actually pour in, where we actually know what's going on with V2. The big thing now that Sarcophagus is in is it's time to grow. There are a core group of people that are working on this. There are a core group of users that are using this. But with V2, it's going to push Sarcophagus to the next step, and that's where the ability, and this vote is going to be coming up. It's been discussed quite a few times in the Sarcophagus channel, in the Decent DAO channel, a growth sub DAO, right? Focusing on what needs to happen for Sarcophagus to be in places like legal offices, to have the ability to give them an SDK and let them just create their own front end, and the rest is taken care of. So that's where we go to the growth sub DAO. Migs is going to discuss this. This is his brainchild. This is something that's been discussed again quite often. Migs actually went into it and said, "Let me discuss." He gave a proposal. All this information is out there. You can look for it. You can see it. It's in the chat channels. You can see his ideas. But he's just going to talk today what the future Sarcophagus could be with this sub DAO. This is not right. This doesn't exist yet. It's in its infancy. There has to be a vote to allow it to occur. So I figured this was a good time to actually discuss that. So Migs, do you want to?
I think where we have been, so Quick Change, myself, Johnny, a couple others, we've been around in this project for almost a year, and them of course a little bit longer than myself. But as we've seen the project kind of grow and mature, and especially get into this spot where we are with V2 development, we feel that as we get closer to the end of the year, when V2 is getting ready to release, we're getting much closer to a point in the project where developing growth initiatives, either through marketing, generating interest in the project externally, and also building relationships with potential partners, or looking to grow the way that we're building as a community. I think is what I'm trying to target with this growth sub DAO. So we've in the past tried to do some marketing attempts with Sarcophagus, and I just think that where we were as a project, it really wasn't in a good place to be in that true marketing mode. But definitely, as we're ramping up, getting closer to the release of V2 towards the end of the year, we definitely need to start focusing efforts on how do we build the brand and our identity and also then start taking the application itself and starting to kind of hang it out there, truly understand what some of our use cases, like the legal use case, is probably our best low-hanging fruit that we can target and try to get a grasp for how lawyers and different legal professionals can leverage and utilize a decentralized dead man switch for some of their clients and the nature of work that they're doing, especially like in will and trust. So one of the things that like we want to really try and target and do that's kind of part of the ethos of the whole Sarcophagus project is really just try to focus on grassroots strategies on how we do this. So we understand that, like Quick Change mentioned earlier, you know, like a 70-year-old person or a much older person might have difficulties trying to leverage this. So they probably wouldn't be part of our targeted potential users. You know, we want to try to target people who are in the legal professions that would really utilize a dead man switch to, you know, hold assets or set aside assets such as a will and trust. Looking at really crypto native people who are embedded into the crypto ecosphere that really need a solution for, you know, what happens to them if something would happen to them, like what happens to their assets, their digital assets, stuff that a decentralized dead man switch can answer. So I think, you know, as we're going along this path, some of the things that I wanted to try to put together is slowly build this Grow Sub DAO team that would essentially, you know, if you look at what we have as the ambassadors right now, really that's more internal facing. So it's community management. How do we build, generate hype, keep people interested? And I think the Grow Sub DAO is going to be more externally focused. So how do we go outwardly to try to build a brand and identity? How do we go outwards to build those relationships and partnerships with outsiders so that we can get the name of Sarcophagus out there, highlight our capabilities, and show what we're capable of doing? So I think a lot of the early groundwork with this Grow Sub DAO is going to be really focused on maintaining and building documentation. You know, that's probably the least fun part of the whole thing, but it's probably going to be the foundation of it all. You know, getting content built for designs and for marketing items, also for, you know, presentations and different type of scripts that we'd used for how we approach, you know, those potential partners or relationships that we would build. So, you know, working with different folks within our current community to help build those is going to be probably the first couple of months worth of work. The second thing would probably be doing market research. So we kind of already have an idea of different facets and areas that decentralized dead man could work, you know, such as the legal example I mentioned before, journalism, highly confidential secrets that would need to be kept secret, and other use cases. And then try to work and see and figure out how do we build those, build off of that. And from that, you know, get those users, those targeted people within Sarcophagus, or at least make them aware of it. And then I think the last thing, as we slowly get this Grow Sub DAO kicked off, and again, subject to pending vote, of course, is that, you know, as we kind of grow and begin to do things more and more, slowly try to drive continuous improvement within the Sarcophagus DAO. I think part of our remit is going to be, one, help grow the Sub DAO with getting new relationships, new partnerships. And then secondly is going to be, how do we start looking inwardly and seeing at different things that we can help to improve. And, you know, that's going to be a lot of input and feedback that we receive from our different customers and community members. So, I mean, anybody who's here on the call or anybody who is listening to this after the fact, definitely chime in. You know, the whole point of the DAO, of a DAO setup, is that anybody can be a part of it. You know, anybody who shows interest or has ideas of things that we can do to help grow, drive, market, and, you know, highlight and showcase what we're capable of doing. We're definitely all ears. I know we recently created the Sub DAO set of channels. So anybody who has any kind of information or things or ideas, I think nothing right now is like, you know, out of bounds, so to speak. So, I mean, right now we're just really in those crucial early steps of what we're trying to build and trying to identify areas that we can go in there. So, I mean, when we get further down the line and we start talking about how do we pitch and approach people after we kind of get some of the documentation and the market research set up, is how do we run demos and how do we set that up? And then for the growth sub-DAO itself, it's still just a proposal to create the growth sub-DAO, but there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to need to identify the working parameters of the growth sub-DAO. So the ambassadors has a pretty rigid way of how do you become an ambassador, how ambassadors manage the multi-sig, how do they vote, all this kind of stuff. So, essentially the growth sub-DAO is going to have to come up with those core ideas too. And we're kind of leaning on a model that's similar to the payroll sub-DAO, where most people who are core contributors are going to be part of the multi-sig, and then we'll have like an M of N setup for approval of that multi-sig. So, we would have like a 5 of 20, just throwing out random numbers out there. But like, we would need significant less amount of people to approve any kind of spending that we would need to do to help drive some of the activities necessary for the growth sub-DAO. And the idea behind that is just that we don't want to have things stuck. So if someone happens to be on vacation or people are busy, just like we are, most of us have our own real-time jobs or doing other things, we can keep the progress moving by having that kind of set up and be a little bit more agile and flexible in the way we manage the sub-DAO. And then eventually, I think what we're going to try and do is that, we're going to have our marketing design people that are always going to be working both with the ambassadors and also the growth sub-DAO, building some of the awesome content that we have with our designs. Liv and Essie are like two of our main contributors in that space. And then also work to kind of identify, I hate this term, but product lines of sorts. So, we have like that legal product line where we're going to have like people who are going to be really focused on trying to, how do we get contact? How do we generate relationships? How do we go down that leg of identifying and making the best of those opportunities with the legal group? Another product line could be maybe focused on journalism. Another product line could be focused on continuous improvement type things. So there's just going to be a different ways that people can be a part of and manage and help grow the growth sub-DAO. And like I said, and Quick Change alluded to this too earlier, I think the growth sub-DAO is still early and it's still kind of in its primitive state right now. It's still subject to a vote. So as we kind of iron out some of the details, as I mentioned before too, feel free to throw in any kind of ideas of things you would like to see implemented. Ultimately, myself as a community member, and many of you guys who are community members, I think what we want to do is just trying to build and create a situation where all the hard work that we've done over the past year, especially with the decent folks with all the V2 development, we just want to showcase and highlight it and kind of give it a place to shine and kind of basically show off what we were doing. So that's kind of the whole point and background behind the growth sub-DAO, and part of the reason why I felt it was like the right time to start getting it kicked off and getting us moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think, it seems like you have a lot of support. There are a lot of people that are saying, it's a good idea. I definitely think it's a good idea, and that proposal that you listed, your initial proposal where you listed all the information on the documentation you need, how you're going to focus on the targeted users, especially, and you mentioned things like demos, brochures, technical documents, simpler documents, how you're going to set up the growth. I think it's very thought out, and I think if you can focus on that, that would actually allow the growth sub-DAO to grow more. So as you set up more information, as that proposal actually goes live, we'll see and go from there. But I think that is, even if we were to say the growth sub-DAO doesn't, for whatever reason, if there isn't enough support, this still has to happen, right? This still has to happen for Sarcophagus to do well, right? That this information needs to be shared. There needs to be this documentation for users to have. So I think you doing this is kind of aligning with exactly what is needed for Sarcophagus to grow outside of just the community members.
Yeah, and I mean myself, I think that I would even still continue to try to do some of the stuff I'm planning to do, even if it didn't get supported. Although it getting supported would be very helpful in growing it. But yeah.
And good luck, man. We're waiting to see it. Waiting to see what else you have cooked up.
No, definitely going to be a lot of cool stuff. I'm hoping coming out of this.
The last thing I want to talk about was for the future sarcophagus. It's what's going on with kind of the community, right? This was mentioned before. It's been posted in some of the channels. We just, the biggest thing for sarcophagus is not just the community is in they're involved with using sarcophagus, but they're involved with helping sarcophagus. And something that we've tested in the past was bounties. Outside of actual bounties related to bugs, we've run into issues where people are just mass producing items because they meet the threshold of what is required. So something that we brought up and we think is a better idea is kind of twofold. Originally, the thought was ambassadors would tell to become a community member, a candidate, an ambassador, you would have to kind of be more of a self-starter. You would need to provide that information, and it's just not realistic that everyone will be a self-starter. Some people just want to be a part of the community and use sarcophagus. Some people want to be a part of the community but are willing to test the network. Some people are willing to do a little bit more. Some people are willing to do a lot more. So we figured that the best way to do this was kind of come up with this pseudo bounty, right? But in this case, there will be a board, and I'm going to actually show this now. We'll get into this. This is kind of, we want to refresh the community and make it a little bit easier and a little bit more guidance than what we had before. The ambassador program is still going to exist. That's not going away. But when it comes to the community, we'll have more tasks for people to do. This image is just an example of what is going on. It is a board. There's a to-do list. There's an in-progress list. There's an in-review list. There's a done list. To-do is, these are tasks to do. In progress means it's going to keep track of what is going on, what is in progress, who's working on what is being worked on. And then once it's done, it's going to get reviewed, right? It's in review. Was the task completed properly? Did it meet exactly what was needed? So one example was an article, let's just say an article written or translated, right? In the past, we stopped. People were translating articles. They were either going through a translator to translate it, or they, it was just an article that was written. So why I say this is a pseudo bounty, right? This is still going to have the same requirements as before, except there's going to be a little bit more guided, right? This image that's on the screen, right? These are just basic tasks that we just wanted to display what could go on. But I think I'm expecting, and what was discussed prior to this meeting was that there will be more guided works for the community, right? This task board will be used for things like graphics, articles, videos, requirements for running archaeologist, bounties from developers, right? From decent doubt, hey, test it. If you break it, can someone see if they can get X to work in Y situation, right? If you can get that, there will be a bounty for that. But on top of that, it's not going to be the same, hey, if you just write an article with this many words, it's going to get accepted. There's going to be specific cues, something like recording this technical talk, or recording another video, making your own video. That could be an option, but it's going to be more guided in the case of, let's say we have a technical talk coming. We may ask someone to make an image for a technical talk, make an image for some of the badges that are coming. You could ask someone to write an article. Can you write an article about the growth sub-DAO that's coming? Can you write an article about SDKs, explaining how an SDK will be used? Can you write an article about? Can you do the monthly article? This month in review, right? That's going to be something else. Again, videos. Get a video of make the demo, right? Make the demo for the growth sub-DAO. Make the demo for V2, right? That's another option. Those tasks are going to be up there instead of course, anyone, an ambassador can sit there and make video or make an article or write an article or make a graphic. That's not the point of this, right? People want to be involved, and I think the best way to get them involved is to give them slightly more guidance. We tried the self-starters, and there still are definitely self-starters. People come in and they just come up with ideas, and those will be seen, right? And if that's the case, there is a good chance that if you're doing that, you would become an ambassador. If you're someone who just wants to be a part of it and not do anything, that's fine. If you want to take some tasks, there will be tasks there. There will be summaries of tech talks. There will be, whatever you can imagine that will be up there. We'll allow you to do that. And if you complete them, there will be some type of compensation, whether it's in Sarco, Discord points, that will be disclosed prior to you claiming a task, right? You claim a task, you can work on that. One thing I will say is when you claim a task, because it's in progress, we know what is being worked on. If you just claim a task because you want a bounty, just know we are aware of that, and it's probably not the smartest thing to do to claim a task, hold onto it for 4 weeks, then come up with an article. I don't recommend you do that. Finally, right, there is this, so the task board was created. I mentioned the ambassador program, right? You obviously still have the opportunity to join that. You will have these to-do lists. It's going to be more guided. Finally, there is always still the project channel. If you have an idea, if you want to come up with something, you can post it. We have the project channel in the Discord. Post that information. It will be used, right? There's discussion going on. Rebecca Grant, she always posts ideas. Some ideas they turn into helping with like a use case or an image for a use case. Some of them they're like, yeah, this is a little bit outside of what we're looking for, but she's always there. She's always posting ideas, and that I think gets the community talking, right? That's what we need. That project channel is always there. If you have an idea for a task, if you have an idea for Sarcophagus, whether it's the network, that is always there. You use these tools. Use these tools as much as you can, right? They're our way of refreshing what has been going on in the community to make it a little bit more accessible for everyone. And it's also going to be there's going to be much more going out there that users can do. And I think the idea for this is that those who have been involved will continue to be involved and continue to be around. I have done videos in the past, especially on how to use how to create an archaeologist, or I did a version of a demo. I may be there and I may not do any of those videos and ask someone to help me make those videos, or I will help someone make those videos, right? That's also the possibility. So don't think just because someone has done it, they will do it. If this growth sub-DAO gets passed, I do expect that MIGs will have much less time to work on articles. So we may need someone to come in and say, hey, I'll do the monthly article, right? Same thing for with the graphics. If more is needed for the growth sub-DAO, Liv or Essie, who have been doing the graphics, can't do that. We're going to be reaching out to the community, asking, can someone complete this graphic in the same style as Sarcophagus, right? That's always going to be there. I think this is a big deal for the community because this is finally the ability to, hey, you don't have to think of an idea. You don't have to just create an article out of nowhere. We will give you the parameters. Go ahead and run with it. So I don't know, Johnny, if you have any comments, or Migs, if you have comments, or Essie or Liv or anyone, if you have comments on this, this is our refresher. This is coming. This is down the pike. It is on the verge of being launched. There are some updates coming up, and then it's going to continue. Before anyone says anything, last thing is Canada's program for the ambassador. Notice that people just wanted to be a candidate to have the possibility of being an ambassador. That's not needed anymore. It was an additional channel created. It didn't exactly produce the information or conversation that we were hoping it did. People would just join. They wouldn't say anything, just hoping to be picked as an ambassador. That's not that realistic. There were people in there that were good, were active, but for the most part, I would say maybe 90% never said a word. They just joined, said hello, and that was it. So that is going away. It's going to be replaced with this task board, these conversations that are going out to users. There is actually a channel in the Discord, and it hasn't been shown yet, but there's going to be a task board that is for the community, and it's going to be able to be accessed by everyone. Are there?
Yeah, I just wanted.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Oh, I just wanted to say something real quick on the task board. People should be able to actually see what we're doing on the task board while we're doing it, because not only is the board public, but it does little update pings in the project work group channel. Like you said, we are going to have a channel that's dedicated to this board and updates once it is completed. We've got it mostly set up. Now we just need to come up with a list of bounties that all the leadership agrees on. And once that's done, we're basically ready to do the final funding vote for it. So it's getting really close to completion. Those little pings and every once and whatnot in the project work group channel, that's us doing everything to get it up and going, but pretty excited about that.
It's cool. I definitely think it's a good idea, and I think it's time we reinvented the wheel essentially.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that just because we're gonna be maybe busy and trying to get other people, whether they're ambassadors or not, to take on some of the tasks that we were previously doing, doesn't mean that we're not. I think we're gonna be kind of stepping into more of like a management role. I don't really want to say management, but we're still very much going to be around there to offer guidance and to help, and I think we're all very into kind of working collaboratively. We love hearing new ideas, and also there's never like a final draft of something, so it's good to kind of work. I think we're all working together pretty well right now, and we're excited to have more people join and to pick up more speed and be doing more things. Also, I think one thing I wanted to mention about the growth sub-DAO is that we're trying to find a way to just, we're talking about interviewing people, but not necessarily even interviewing, just kind of having conversations with people who have any background in either legal or journalism, or maybe just like using it for your backing up your private keys. We just want to have conversations about how to approach these areas and kind of what the community is like over there, and to begin to start reaching out to them. So yeah, we're around, and if you want to talk to anybody, please feel free to message us directly or in any of the chats.
Okay. I think that covers everything, right? We discussed a lot. I think I actually went through some slides out of order. But this will be posted to the this will be posted in the groups for users to see. Right, it has all this information in there, and it'll be nice to kind of get this information out there. Right, this is a big deal, right? The snowball is going down the hill right now. It's getting close to V2, right? We're past the halfway mark of the year. We're almost in August already, and V2 is expected to come out sometime in Q4, then maybe Q1 of next year if there's anything holding it up. But I think we will have some more updates from the developers very soon on where it is. There's going to be some chats coming up, some talk coming up, so that's important to see. Other than that, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Migs, for jumping in and explaining the growth sub-DAO. I wish you luck on that. I'm definitely a proponent of it, so just waiting to see you finalize that. Johnny, thank you for chiming in on the refresher. I know this has kind of been you've been messing around, tinkering with things. This has been your brainchild. It's good to see that. And Liv, of course, always. Thank you for the ideas for setting up this actual setting up the images for a lot of these talks, and chiming in on this board and what's coming next for V2. Thank you, everyone.